Hey everyone, welcome to episode 169, giggity, of Rush Roundtable. Today we are discussing two songs, two for the price of one. It's BOGO, buy one, get one free. We're talking Warpaint and Scars. So Warpaint is song number four from Presto's 1989. 1989, yes, Presto. Man, it's going to be a long episode. It's all good though. Tonight we've got three people with me. I've got Paul, I've got Ryder, and Alex to give us their expert opinions and views on these two songs. So we're going to kick it off with Warpaint. So Warpaint is, like I said, track number four. So it's a traditional rock song, I guess, where you've got a chorus, uh, a verse, pre-chorus,
Pre-chorus,
and a
chorus.
chorus.
Yeah.
We'll get there. We'll get there eventually. So we'll start it off. The first verse is girl before the mirror appraises her disguise. Child becomes a mother, tries to fix her eyes. No more of his excuses. It has to be today. She can keep her fantasy if she can get away. Paint her name on a one way street, painted cheeks with angry heat, wounded pride on painted eyes, paint the night with battle cries. And then into the chorus, all puffed up with vanity, we see what we want to see. To the beautiful and the wise, the mirror always lies, the mirror always lies. As usual, Neil's deep words. What are your thoughts? Who wants to start?
I'll start off. Back in 1989, when he wrote this, 88, 89, you had big hair. Everything was bright colors, tanning beds, muscle cars. Everything was bigger, was better. So lyrically, what I'm taking from this is a battle of the sexes, basically. It's in the first verse, he's talking about a girl's putting an image out there that isn't herself or is what she feels is more than herself in order to get what she wants. And even live, when they did play this in 89 and 90, what they did was they showed images of, they had the girl and then the boy, and the girl went through scenes of with animation behind her as a graduate, as a socialite, as dressed in business attire, then a Hollywood starlet, and then a homemaker. All these different uh, personifications, all these different images of what she wanted to grow into be. And it's all, again, sticking with the hill that I say I'm going to die on with Presto, the theme of perception, putting out a different perception than what you actually are, an inauthentic self. So that's how I'll start off on the first verse into the chorus.
Anyone else? Ryder, Alex?
Yeah, I think obviously, the song has a very clear message about, vanity and, as Paul was saying, perception. And I think, this is a message that's still, incredibly relevant today. Especially with how prominent, social media and just how, publicized and how instantly everybody has access to everything. Everybody wants to put out like the best possible versions of themselves. Because a lot of people, they have all these flaws and stuff, that they think are stuff that makes them, less cool or, whatever, for whatever reason, somebody wants to hide it. So, you're only putting that best kind of side of yourself out there, I guess, which is still an incredibly relevant message today. When it comes to fashion, interests, music tastes, all that kind of stuff, there's such a need to, there's like an kind of a feeling to stick with the like approved norms and stuff, to stay within and not seem like a total social outcast. You want to seem like the coolest, most popular person ever. When in reality, there's it's not all that. You're hiding certain things behind a big facade. So I applaud the timeless quality of these lyrics, because it's something that's incredibly relevant back then and still today.
Oh yeah, and at this point, obviously the line "the mirror always lies," which he immediately repeated. I mean, at this point, the Instagram always lies. People are
Yeah.
always living their best life on Instagram.
Hmm.
That's true. You never see the reality behind it, right? So can we talk about the music at the beginning of the song though? That initial like da, da, like you just came off the pass, which is really serious, and then it just drives in, right? Like that initial chord, it just kind of gets your attention right off the top. I love it.
And Lifeson's just kind of laying into GG and GCD, basically just that almost stereotypical rock chord progression, which you figure that was, on some level, one of the answers to the synth era. The idea that we're leaving the synth era, so we want to have more of a rock sound, which is, as they say, it's interesting because Rupert Hine, having worked with the Fix, they're definitely and still are very, synth present band, but saying, well, we want to have some straight out rock. Well, the song begins with a straight out rock, just hit those chords.
And I was reading the tour book earlier, and Neil in the talks about how they had switched companies. So I think it was from Mercury to Atlantic, and they had. Now all of a sudden they had no deadlines, they had no pressure, so they took like a 6-month break from just doing anything. After they finished up their Hold Your Fire tour, they took 6 months just to spend time with family, and then all of a sudden the three of them got back together and decided to record another album. And then they were looking at getting Peter Collins to come back. He decided to go another direction, which brought in Rupert Hine for Presto and for Roll the Bones. So we'll move on to the next verse. I'll get them right someday. Boy before the mirror checks his camouflage, polishes his armor and the charger in the garage. No more lame excuses. It has to be tonight. He can take the princess if he can take the fight. Then the pre-chorus is pound the drums with martial beat, pound the streets with marching feet, wounded pride, distorted eyes, paint the night with battle cries. And then he goes back into the chorus. So we go from the first verse with the girl. Now we're going to the boy. What are your impressions on this second verse?
Yeah, I immediately right out of the gate, I love the imagery of checks his camouflage, polishes his armor, and then and the charger in the garage. I always thought, incredible like rhyming scheme, but also just such a cool, unique imagery of like this knight getting ready, but instead of like the horse, it's the charger, which, very popular kind of car still to this day. I like the whole flipping of, from the girl to the boy. The different aspects of vanity and what's kind of considered like the best thing in like the gender norm, I guess, is the best way to kind of look at it compared to like the valiant knight versus, how the girl's perspective was earlier in the song. And I love, the going into the pre-chorus section, pound the drums with a martial beat, pound the streets with marching feet. I think juxtaposed to the music, with it's still it's a very kind of marchy feel. Like it's bum 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 bum. Like it's a very driving beat. And I think that's a great example of the lyrics infusing themselves into the music and kind of like amplifying it further. Just another great skill of the band that they would do that constantly. And then, once again, the chorus comes through great as always. I love the idea of the mirror always lies. I think that's just such a great summation of the entire song. And it's so cool that they keep bringing up the topic of vanity. I think it's a very unique topic that you wouldn't really expect out of Rush compared to like what they were doing in the 70s. It's a kind of unique realm for them to get into.
Yeah, I've always thought of how Neil wound up gradually moving, like in the idea of saying we don't want to be progressive rock or so blatantly so. Let's move off of. Oh, there we go. Let's move off of allegorical lyrics, and Neil went into something more direct, more everyday, and this certainly is that. My thought when I was thinking about these lyrics too is that I assume that the word lame isn't used in the same context now by people in high school or who would be in a younger, more current world, whereas it was certain words like lame or poser were pretty common back in 1989. If you're gonna rip someone, throw a little attitude at them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's true. Paul, do you have any thoughts on this second verse before we move on? Yeah.
Technical issues on my end. Sorry.
Yeah,
flip to the boys. for those live animations I was talking about when they played on the Presto tour. The boy morphs into, there's like the tough guy, and the stereotypical tough guy in a leather jacket, into an aviator, into a football player, into a soldier, into a high schooler being kissed by a girl on each cheek, and into a rock star. So again, that image, that what do I want to be, that, what identity do I want to put out there or choose for myself? And again, these, I said it on the Pass as well, but the Pass and Warpaint were kind of my subdivisions when I started getting into Rush. They were the songs where I went, these guys get it. And getting back to what Ryder had said about the music, I was glad he explained that too. When Neil was writing the music, or we're doing the drums, when it came to after the lyrics were written and Alex and Getty written the music, he realized that it had to be more of a simplistic. And actually, with in an interview with Musician Magazine, he actually said the song really demanded it to be very simple, almost to the point of moronic when it came, his words, when it came to the intro and the choruses, but he made it interesting by putting all these fills in throughout, or intro and the verses, and then in the choruses, he got to put all these fills in. So that made it really accessible to a new Rush fan like me back in 89 and 90. So that was actually a big draw for me. And one of my favorite fills, as simple as it is that crescendo he builds up to right before we go into the final set of choruses, which I don't want to get ahead of us. You'll read it in a minute. But I just thought that was brilliant. And again, that whole idea of a wide dynamic range on these songs, musically, Getty's vocals, and even on the themes. So
maybe moronic to his standards, but like you said, it fit the song. But it fit the song, right?
To a non-drummer like me, for example, yeah, it was made it very accessible. And then when I listened closer and heard all the fills and all the little intricacies in it, that
you really learn. You learn to appreciate the music even more as every time I listen to a song, I try to listen to every little beat, every little guitar and bass, like just to try to really kind of, because growing up I was a drummer, so I focused on Neil constantly, kind of almost tuning out the rest, and I'm realizing like, no, all three guys are really good. But so then we have a short instrumental section. Does anybody want to have a quick chat about that one before we?
Before the solo. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Tripping me up there. I was already thinking solo.
You're thinking.
I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna sit out until the solo.
Well, I mean, I can.
I'm gonna make Ryder talk about it.
Oh, geez. All right. Yeah. So, carrying through
you're the one that said you listened to the song like for an hour straight today before the show.
Yeah,
so.
I was. So we were talking about it before the episode. I was building out my schedule a little bit like ahead of the week, and I had forgotten to put this on my schedule. And I was at a restaurant on my college campus with my roommate, and I was just sitting at the counter, waiting for my sandwich. And I think to myself, I'm like, crap, I got a Roundtable. So I had to put in a headphone right there in the middle of the deli and start listening to these songs. So I'm brushing back up on them. But yeah, this little short instrumental section, I think, I think perfectly continues to carry the motion of the song, reintroducing some themes from earlier in the track. And then, eventually carrying into the next portions of the song. I think this is a pretty good inclusion in there, just kind of break up the, what we've been dealing with for a while. Because, as we've been saying, it's a little bit more simple in structure compared to, your average Rush song. So I think, giving this little break right here kind of breaks things up, stops making things feel so samey, and especially going into these latter sections of the song. I think it's really good at resetting the listener.
Yeah. And if I were saying anything about it, I would it's sort of it's just a re-intro basically.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
In some ways.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so then we move on to, I guess you could consider a third chorus. It's called Boys and Girls Together, Mistake Conceit for Pride, Ambition for Illusion, Dreams for Self-Delusion. Girls and boys together, see what it is we lack. Boys and girls together, let's paint the mirror black, painted black. Thoughts?
So again, one of the ways Neil writes lyrically is presents a problem or the issue or the topic, and then he offers a solution. And in the first two verses and then up to this and the choruses and then up to this, it's been, okay, you're putting all these different images or projections out there. Be your authentic self. Ambition, for illusion, dreams of self-delusion. Stop deluding yourselves and stop putting lies out there. Be your authentic self. That's cut and dried, cut to the chase right there. I mean, I played this for I first heard this when I was 17, and I played it for my almost 17-year-old son last night, which he's heard it 1,000 times. It's next to maybe The Garden. I think it's the song I've most listened to in the 33 years I've been a Rush fan. And I said, I want you to listen to Warpaint. Dad, I've heard Warpaint plenty. No, I know, but I want you to listen to the lyrics and then tell me what you think it's about or what you get from it. And he took the exact same thing I took from it at 17. So going back to what Ryder said, as far as it being timeless, my son Colin, love you, brother, he heard the exact same thing. It's just that, A, awesome father-son moment, but B, the fact that it still carries through and it still resonates. It's still, like you said, very, very timely today. It's as simple a song as it may be musically at times, or a simple thought of you could sum up in a couple sentences. This still fleshes out really well, even to this day. That's great writing and great musicianship.
Fade to black, cut, print, we're done. No. So with that, now we're going to move on to Alex's guitar solo. So Alex, now you can talk about the guitar solo that you were thinking of.
So much like that instrumental break, 8 measures. Short solo, really, when you think about it. And the first 6 measures, he's not really harmonized, but they recorded it an octave apart. So you have sort of the phrase, and you have the phrase, whether you want to call the overdub an octave up or an octave down, I don't know. But for the final 2 measures, they bring it in as more of a unison fill. Well, not a fill, but they're more notes, unison figure, more so. But it's pretty straightforward, a little sparse, but fills in at the end, kind of like a little bit like the past, but not exactly. Obviously, I think I'm okay.
It's
short and to the point. I'm going to say it that way.
It's short, but it fits the song.
Well, they all fit the song, yeah.
Right, but I mean, you don't need to go to a 2-minute solo for this song, right? Like it was probably 30 seconds, maybe, give or take.
Oh yeah.
8 bars.
I mean, yeah. At that tempo, it's going by kind of quickly.
Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts on the solo before we move on to the final? Well, I guess you want to call it. It's not really it's like the chorus kind of repeats itself, but it's in different. The lines are kind of
an outro chorus,
and it delivers the message.
Yeah,
right. All puffed up with vanity, we see what we want to see. To the beautiful and the wise, the mirror always lies. That's repeated, and then there's the repeat and fade out, which is boys and girls together paint the mirror black. The mirror always lies. Then it just keeps repeating until it finally fades to black. Or fades out, I guess. It's an interesting way to finish a song, personally. Boys and girls together, paint the mirror black. And like, I think, Paul, you were talking about the live show on the Presto tour, what they did on stage. So
yes, and keeping in mind, this is the song where the rabbits are coming up. So you've already got these images, the animations. The rabbits finally rise all the way.
Alex
is showing us in his background. Exactly. You see the ears come out of the hats. But anyway, the final animation of the song for that part, and again, another song that fades out on the album, I was much happier with the way it went live because during those constant boys and girls together paint the mirror black, what it is on the screens, it shows an animation of a crowd, boys and girls, and then the words boys and girls together are coming out like
Star Wars.
Yes, thank you. That I was Star Wars. Yes, whatever the header or whatever it is.
The scroll, the crawl.
The scroll's the word I'm looking for. They're scrolling out that way, and then flecks of black paint start hitting the screen like a mirror. When I saw this live, outside of being a very cool way to end the song, the person behind me was clearly enjoying this concert on a much different level than I was. So when the black flecks of paint are hitting the screen, he starts screaming, "This is it! It's the end of the world! It's the apocalypse! It's Ragnarok!" Turn around, I'm like, he is getting way more out of this than I am, and this is a song I've been waiting for all night. So It's a bummer to me they didn't play it after Presto, because I wanted to see if I was missing something. Maybe I would have gotten it differently on Roll the Bones or Counterparts, but it was only on the Presto tour. So yeah, but I just, again, huge song for me. So
It's awesome. You got to see it live during the Presto tour, so that's pretty cool. Anyone else have any? On YouTube. Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts before we wrap up part 1 of this episode?
Yeah, I think, overall, this song is just great. As I've said, timeless message. Definitely, I agree. It shouldn't have ended on a fade out. I think it's a little bit more tolerable of a fade out than some of the other ones in the Rush discography, but at the same time, I think it kind of deserved a big ending, especially with, how large it got towards the end with the boys and girls together, which I've always really loved the vocal layering on that. I don't know if there's some processing or if it's just Geddy singing a very low harmony, but it almost sounds, there's like octaves going on, and it's just super cool. You don't hear a lot of vocal work like that on Rush albums. I think it was a really unique kind of production trick for them to do to bolster that up. But overall, this song is definitely a hidden gem off of Presto. I think anyone who hasn't listened to it yet definitely should. And, if it's been a while, definitely this one is worth a revisit.
Most definitely. Well, with that, that's a wrap on song number 4 from Presto. So we'll move on now to the next song, which is number 5, which is completely kind of a different song when you think about it. It's Scars. So you get that initial hey, and then off you go. What's this? But Scars is a short song, about 4 minutes, give or take. So the opening verse: I've stood upon my mountaintop and shouted at the sky. While I walked above the pavement with my sense amplified, I get this feeling. All my nerves are naked wires, tender to the touch, sometimes super sensitive, but who can care too much? I get this feeling. And then finally go into the chorus. Scars of pleasure, scars of pain, atmospheric changes make them sensitive again. And then they repeat that again. So, what are your initial thoughts on Scars? Other than the hey,
what more can we say after that?
Yeah, well, I think probably one of the biggest things to talk about is the instrumentation right after that. Hey, synth slap bass, on a like looped groove. Yeah, sequence synth slap bass line. Like what? This is crazy. It's. I think I mentioned it earlier in these Presto roundtables that this was kind of Rush experimenting with a brand new way to utilize synthesizers in their music. Which we definitely saw a lot with Hold Your Fire, but now coming into Presto, we see that a lot more. And this is just Rush in a completely different wheelhouse. I very much like this song, and I'll definitely get into that later on, but I can understand why to some this is an incredibly jarring listen to and a big turnoff for some people. Like I as much as I like to give Rush the benefit of the doubt and be like, listen to it, because obviously, this is a very good song. This is a very big stylistic change, and it definitely took some time for me to warm up to it. But, thinking about that sequenced bass line across these, the bongos that Neil has going in the background, that pattern is so intricate. And then Alex in the back with some very atmospheric faint strumming in the back. It's, this is crazy. Rush has never done anything like this before. But it's really, really unique. And I think it works tremendously, especially with the lyrics as, they go on later, with some of the imagery that Neil chooses to tap off of. But it's just so jarring coming out of the gate. I don't blame anyone for initially being like, what is this?
I was actually, the first time I heard it, I thought it was an actual bass line. I never made the connection that it was a sequencer, right? And then I read about it and I went, no, like, what are you doing, guys? Like, that's not Geddy? Like, what? But it's, a straight 4/4 song right through. And Neil's, like I said, tribal, rhythmic, you listen to it and you go, how does he do it? Like it's just my so he's using the acoustic kit but also the electronic kit at the same time. And it's just mind blowing to hear him go. And of course, some of the parts end up in his drum solos down the road. He incorporates that. So, what are your thoughts on the lyrics? Because we all know the music was right off the get go going, "Whoa, what's this?"
Yeah.
Anyone?
Well, I mean, lyrically, it's certainly the chorus really sells it all. I mean, obviously the verses, like most songs, would be telling a story, but I mean, by the time you do get to the chorus, as Neil said in interviews, just the whole idea that everything affects us. Everything affects us negatively and positively, and that's the whole concept of scars of pleasure, scars of pain. I think to me, I was thinking earlier, it's kind of interesting with the idea of the atmospheric changes makes them sensitive again. I assume he was going for kind of reaching for that whole like axiom of someone who might be, especially if you're getting a little older, which some of us might be. Well, like literally everybody is, but no one's aging backwards. But the idea that at a certain point, the notion of someone saying, "Oh, it's going to rain later, my hip is at," whatever, that kind of like old person's vibe, so to speak, but also bringing in the idea of the atmospheric changes certainly deals with what we encounter in our daily life. This aspect that affected us negatively. Oh, now I can't deal with this, or vice versa. This affected me. Oh, I love that. Oh, I remember that's awesome. Get all wistful and reminiscent. But that's just me skipping over the verses. We're going right to that chorus because, as I say, it's like he just kind of just landed right on that thing. From my point of view.
Yeah, I agree. It's the whole idea of emotional or resonance or intellectual resonance. Scars of pleasure and scars of pain. I'm jumping ahead too. The whole idea that they're pleasure and pain, there's positive and negative connotations, but in using scars as a metaphor for these imprintings on us, and then when they're brought back, whether it's by a memory or by something else, a stimulus, in other words, something we perceive. Told you I was going to die on this hill. Something we perceive, and it refreshes that experience. We may think back on a situation that seemed difficult at one point, and then look back on it longingly or happily later. These are experiences neither bad nor good until we put our perception into it. So the whole idea that these scars, these permanent marks on us, on our souls, on our spirits, on our intellect, however you want to look at it, on our memory, once they're re-stimulated or we feel something jar them again, then it's like, oh yeah. So that's how I took it as the metaphor.
So scars could be like an experience, right? Could be pleasurable, it could be a negative, positive, whatever the case is. Something comes back, how we perceive it comes back. It just brings up memories, brings up feelings. Yeah, definitely. So that obviously the chorus is quite right there. But then we go to the second verse. Each emotional injury leaves behind its mark. Sometimes they come tumbling out like shadows in the dark. I get this feeling. When I think about all I have seen and all I'll never see, when I think about the people who have opened up to me, I get this feeling. And then they go into the chorus again. I get this feeling. When he says that, it's just kind of like, oh, makes you think. I get this feeling. It's just this song itself is just, it sticks out in the album. I don't know what it is. Like I don't skip it when I hear it. It's like, oh, well, you can't. You hear that, you're like, I'm not skipping that. Listening to this, it's it just, I don't know, it gets me. It grabs you and you can't help but listen to it. You don't have a choice.
Well, this was always one on the album I always liked immediately. And, and I'm sure like with so many other songs on various albums, I'm sure the placement, the idea of having Warpaint fade out, so that way it's sort of, okay, yeah, we're here then. Hey, you're right in on it. I'm not going for the high voice because that'd be ridiculous for me. But it's the sort of thing where, like we were saying here, that it's Geddy's way of using synthesizers in a more straight ahead, punchy rock fashion. But also, too, I feel like with Neil saying, I get this feeling, I feel like it's an answer to Taishan in a way. because he begins talking about standing on the mountaintop and shouting at the sky. He's just all of these verses, all the stanzas end with "I get this feeling," and Tai Shan was obviously the strong emotional level up for him, which
definitely.
certainly even from his bandmates got some attitude. So the idea here is that I feel like it's sort of okay. Well, if we're gonna do it emotional, I guess I got to have some punch. So I'm gonna bring in the African rhythms, and we're gonna have this not be quite as introspective as Tai Shan. This is gonna be a little more like, let's get out there and move.
And it's existentialism at its purest. It's a song about existence.
Yeah.
What I have existed through, how I'm going to perceive it now, and as we've said before, it's being repeated over and over. I get this feeling. That line is recurrent throughout the whole thing. It's all about feelings.
Yeah.
And what they mean to us.
So then we go into the third verse. Snow falls deep around my house and holds the winter light. I've heard the lions hunting in the Serengeti night. I get this feeling. Forests have turned to factories and rivers, sea and sky. Hungry child in the desert and the flies that cloud her eyes. I get this feeling. And then go into the chorus again, but with the drums only. There's no, the bass synth disappears and the guitar disappears. It's just drop the bass line. It's just Neil and so what are your thoughts on this? Well, I mean,
Yeah, these lyrics, when I was re-listening to the song recently, this little last verse right here has always kind of tripped me up in relation to the rest of the song. I love the imagery in it. I've heard the lions hunting in the Serengeti night, and then, the hungry child in the desert and the flies that cloud her eyes. Those are such stark images. I think they're just great with the song, and definitely heard the lions hunting. Finally, I think it kind of justifies this kind of like jungle rhythm feel that's going on with the whole song, especially with the congas and stuff. But as I was listening to this song, there's definitely, meaning within these lyrics, but I was thinking about, this word choices that they use, going from a theme of like a snowy kind of space into lions hunting in like Africa where it does not snow, or, forest turns to factories and river, sea, and sky. It's kind of a strange combination of words. I almost relate it to, and I don't know if this was an intentional thing or not, John Anderson of Yes. Not to stray too far off, we already know that I can't go 5 minutes without talking to something unrelated to the song. But especially Yes. John Anderson, whenever he would write lyrics, more often than not, he was writing them for the sonic qualities of them, to use them kind of as an instrument to push forward the music. That's why you hear so often in Yes songs words like river. They have a very unique kind of way to move the song forward. And I can't help but think that some of these lyrics might have been chosen to kind of make that feel a little bit more interesting. Maybe, it's obviously still sticking to the meaning, but like the specific words in this section, like river, sea, and sky, he kind of stresses that in a different way that he's done from other lines in the song. And I think it's a really interesting kind of way to think about how the words are being used in relation to the music.
And there's almost like a jazz spiral to it. Live, he did the same thing, and actually did it with Warpaint as well, where a couple lines where maybe they had them streamlined. I don't want to say, streamlined is good enough, I guess. He takes them in different directions, or he hits different notes to accentuate different accents on different lines live. So I think you may be right. At least that's how I picked up on too. Plus, this verse also sounds like it has a little bit more experience to it, which would fit the overall theme of the song and lyrics we've been talking about too. But I think the choices, that's a really good observation.
Or even with the idea of I was thinking that too today, as far as the lyrics for the beautiful and the wise and all that. The mirror always lies, going back to Warpaint too. Just, he kind of keeps bringing in the wise. He had the shallow, but he had the deep. And the idea of the just wise obviously rhymes with lies. So he's got to work the rhyme scheme, but he is doing a lot of, just these antithetical images side by side, like you're saying, between snow around maybe his house in Quebec or, to the Serengeti. I mean, It's a strong contrast, and he was working that, as I say, a little bit in Warpaint too.
Huh?
Those writers.
Those freaking writers.
Jeez.
So, so we had the chorus with the drums only. They repeated it twice, and then they go into they repeat the chorus with the full instrumentation again. So everybody comes back in for the party, which is Rush's way of saying, how are we going to do things differently again? No such thing as a traditional way to finish a song. So, and then they go into, like, I guess it's not another verse, but it says, pleasure leaves a fingerprint as surely as mortal pain. In memories, they resonate and echo back again. And then they go into repeating the chorus, but they remove instruments one at a time until it's only the drums, which is a really cool way of finishing the song. And it just cuts cold.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a drummer would say that.
I think that is, it's a really unique way to end the song. And also, shout out to the drummers, highlighting Neil's incredible work with electronic percussion on this track. But I think it's a really interesting way to end a song because, we think so often about, especially let's think about the episode or the song we just talked about, Warpaint, how we were talking about how it should have, it's building up so high. It should have ended with a big grandiose finish. This song's moving in the exact opposite direction, stripping it back to the core idea of the song. The chorus, scars of pleasure, scars of pain, so on and so forth. And the rhythmic ideas of the music with the bongos. I think it's really interesting bringing that kind of structure back in reverse. And the final bit of the song, make them sensitive again. And it just snaps right there. It's like, that's the entire point of the song. Both lyrically and sonically. I think it's an incredibly unique way to end a song.
And Ryder, you said on previous roundtables, as far as crafting this scene or this score, musically and lyrically, when they put it all together, as far as Scars goes, they start off talking about an experience or a memory, and then as they have explained, as we've talked about throughout the whole song, adding all these experiences, all these images, all this to the metaphor, and it's this full sound. Then as it ends, they start removing, think of it towards maybe the end of a life, if you want to stay on the existential thing. You're removing all the added things that your memories have put in, your experiences have put in, back to its base thought, that initial experience only. So it starts off small, gets big, and then as we pull all these pieces off of it, we are left with, at the end, just the simple ending.
I'm not 100% sure. Was this song played live during the tour?
Yes.
It was.
Yep.
And it ends with that punch, too.
And Lifeson got to do some different ambient type fills and whatnot. So they're a little different live than on the album, which the Auburn Hills performance can be found on YouTube of both of these songs.
Thank you, Dick Hits, for improving that.
Yeah, very worthwhile to check out for anyone. Yeah, one of the things you were just saying about, as far as like in this final verse, not really bridge, but it's kind of the idea that when we think about his tense, as far as snow falls deep around my house, I heard the lions hunting. He's kind of going a little bit of a back and forth, but at the end, it's definitely pleasure leaves a fingerprint. Present tense, surely as mortal pain. And the idea that when we get to that point, as far as you start saying mortal pain and memories, it's present tense the way he's saying it, but it is kind of bringing it towards the end. The end could be now. I have these memories. And mortal pain, mortal really starts to bring in the idea of, whoa, okay, there is an end to this at some point. It doesn't have to be painful, but just one of the things you made me think of.
And interesting, there was actually no guitar solo in that song.
Well, he's kind of just soloing throughout. So the idea is that he's
playing he's in the background.
Yeah, it's more like this is really reliant on the rhythm. So it's and that's the thing, is that at this point right now, obviously there's a lot of there's a certain degree of controversy among people online with Kiss and Motley Crue using backing tracks, but there are a lot of musicians, a lot of people who have built, and I've been doing this since the 90s myself because of that. Some of these individuals I would look to, a lot of people who have built a sound, a style on looping, on sequencing. I mean, back, in 1989, 1990, they were called sequencers. They were called samplers. Looping wasn't a term until the mid 90s. So in that case, I mean, you have players like Robert Fripp and David Torn, who've, are definitely big names in guitar looping, and Bill Frisell and whatnot. But the fact that, in 1989, a rock band who was very synth for a few years leading up, saying, all right, we're going to go back to being a rock band. Well, samplers are here. Flam, sampler in the rack. All right, let's sample this bass line, and we're going to work around the electronics. So the electronics have the rhythm. Neil can play, Geddy can sing, and then Leifson can work his fills here and there, and which he did. He had his high pitch kind of his sus chord at the 10th fret, kind of clean, but played a lot of distorted, as they say, fills, F minor. He has a little bit of a riff that comes in later that's not unlike the this one riff in the bridge section of what was that White Lion song, Cry for Freedom. Came out the same year, so no one's copying each other. It's just probably a happy accident.
And I think Neil mentioned, like in the writing in the tour book, that they wanted to try to go back to a more simple rock, guitar-driven, less synth, less electronic.
Right.
But the tools are all there. It's hard to just completely ignore it. Like they use it to add color. That's what he said. I think was color to the songs, right? So, but I think this song is just completely different from anything else. So it's just it's a great song. So, with that, does anyone else have any final words before we wrap it up for today? No. Yes.
Two great examples of what Rupert Hine brought to Presto, which was keep it simple, pare it down, show me what you guys got.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is probably one of the Geddy's best vocal performances from an album. Like his range is just from Power Windows, it just builds up to like Presto and Roll the Bones, and unfortunately, his age kind of caught up in the 90s, but it's vocally, and he's just amazing. Like the range he reaches on this album is fantastic. So with that, we'll wrap it up. So that's 2 songs today, folks. We got War Paint and Scars, songs number 4 and 5 from Presto. We appreciate you guys watching. Click the link, like, subscribe, and leave your comments. We want to hear what you think about War Paint and Scars. We read every comment and we even reply. So anyway, guys, have a great day, and we'll be talking on the next one.